When it comes to light, we often think sunshine first, but it is equally important to honor the darkness. We talk a lot about avoiding artificial blue light at night on this podcast, and that means protecting ourselves from blue and green light after sunset. This sets us up for that melatonin release and quality restorative sleep. This is why Laura and I wear VIVARAYS. Unlike typical blue blockers, they design glasses with circadian biology in mind. It is our go-to source for protecting our circadian rhythms. You can use the code QUANTUMHEALTHY for a discount. Link is in the show notes. Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andeea, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. We have a very special guest today, Susan Peirce Thompson, who I'm going to introduce. And yeah, she's just a very special person in my life. She might not know it, but she is. All right. So she is a PhD and she is an adjunct associate professor of brain and cognitive sciences at the University of Rochester, a multiple New York Times bestselling author and an expert in the psychology of eating. She is the president of the Institute of Sustainable Weight Loss and the founder of Bright Line Eating, a global movement helping individuals to break free from ultra-processed food addiction and maintain a healthy weight long term. Over the past 10 years, over 2 million people have subscribed to the Bright Line Eating email list to receive free education, including a weekly video blog that provides science-based insight into people's challenges with modern-day hyper-palatable foods. And so, welcome to our podcast, Susan. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you, Andeea. Thank you, Laura. Thanks for having me.
So I just want to start. So I found you on Instagram, or you kept coming up in my Instagram, and then one day I realized I wasn't following you and started following you, and I never really dove into Bright Line Eating at that time. And then, but you kept coming into my energy, and then you came to where I work, and you gave a beautiful, wonderful continuing education talk on ultra processed food addiction, and here we are now. And then I invited you on this podcast. So what you do is so in line with what Laura and I teach, your values, your all the things is so aligned. And I also relate heavily to your story. And I've heard you share your story multiple times now. Sorry. I will probably get emotional more than once in this podcast, so just be ready for that, everybody. And I'm just really excited for you to share that today here. So why don't we start there? You just sharing a little bit about you and your story and then how you got into this work.
Oh, thank you. Well, if you relate to my story, then you're my people. Oh, gosh. All right. Well, I wasn't a fat kid, but I was concerned about my weight enough that when I found drugs at the age of 14, I was really excited about the 7 pounds I lost on that first mushrooms trip. And, it's funny because the word drugs is just kind of unfortunate, I think. I'm 50 years old now. I was born in 1974 in June, and the Nancy Reagan Just Say No to Drugs campaign was happening when I was coming of age. And it was like, an egg frying in a frying pan, this is your brain on drugs, right? And I was a good student and I was thinking like, I'm not going to get derailed by drugs and alcohol. Like, no, ma'am. And then I did mushrooms and I was like, oh, drugs aren't bad. They're good. And within a few years, I was snorting crystal meth and losing even more weight. And then it just got bad from there. I dropped out of high school. I went to three different high schools and ultimately dropped out. I quit the crystal meth, which was my all-time drug of choice, but then just got hooked on cocaine. And then I learned how to freebase it. And then I was smoking crack cocaine. And then I was prostituting. And, it just went bad, like really fast. And it didn't feel like I don't know. It didn't feel like I'd chosen to abandon everything I ever wanted or believed in. It just sort of was a creeping set of non-choices that all of a sudden I was in a crack house with a blonde wig on my head when I was 20 years old, just going, how did I get here?
Mm.
And I walked out of there and got taken to a 12-step meeting for drug and alcohol rehabilitation on a first date that night by some like super cute but not very well guy that I'd met at a gas station earlier that week. And I've been clean and sober ever since. So I've 30 years clean and sober now.
Oh
Thank you,
my gosh.
God. And but my addiction jumped right over to food. And before I knew it, I was living with clinical obesity. And I was going to, from quickie marts to grocery stores to restaurants to wherever, binging my brains out, eating bags and boxes, eating whole pints of ice cream and topping it off with cherry pies and Twix bars and just thinking, "Oh my God, what is going on with me?" And I had a moment of clarity about a year into my sobriety. I had a moment of clarity where I realized this is not eating, this is using. This feels just like being in the crack house. I was sort of I had bought all these binge foods. It was like 4 in the morning. I bought all these binge foods. I've been binging all night, going out to smoke a cigarette, coming back into my one room that I rented in this little house in San Jose and in California. And I came back in after smoking a cigarette to like the dripping open pints of ice cream because I would buy not just one but like 3 pints of ice cream and the dripping on the side and then the candy bar wrappers and the pot of pasta like half eaten and the like one or two halves of an English muffin left over from the six I'd just eaten and the pan of brownies and the pizza and I just came back in to like keep eating. And while I was out, this is how old I am, the 4 channels of TV, whatever I'd been watching had gone to the big vertical bars that were going boop, boop, boop. And I came back in from the cigarette and I just could feel the sickness. Like I could feel the addiction energetically. And I just said to myself, you are using again. This is not sober behavior. You are using. So I knew I was a food addict at the age of 21. I was super clear, but I didn't know what to do about it. I did go to a 12-step program. There wasn't a 12-step program that I'm aware of at that time. This was 1995 for food addiction, but I went to one that dealt with food. I didn't really get clarity or help about what exactly to do, what to abstain from. I mean, it's super clear when I had a crack cocaine problem, I knew at any given moment whether I was smoking crack or not. And I knew what the first puff of that glass pipe was, and I knew not to do it. And I quit cigarettes the same way shortly thereafter. And I knew whether I was clean and sober or not. With food, I couldn't quite tell. And I spent the next 8 years like trying to figure out how to wrangle this beast of food addiction so that I could get clean from it. And I couldn't figure it out. And I got sponsors in the 12-step program and it never quite worked out. I would get abstinent for a little while. Like it took me even a while to figure out that I needed to abstain from sugar. But then there were still artificial sweeteners. And then it was like, well, maybe flour, white flour, brown flour. Like there were so many variables in the mix. And I was always kind of gaming the system. There's yogurt with fruit on the bottom, and there's barbecue sauce, and I don't know, just so many variables. I couldn't figure it out. So 8 years later, I was fatter than ever
Oh.
and literally clinically obese. And meanwhile, food addiction is so interesting, right? Because you can function on it. I mean, a lot of people function with it, like use it to function, like use it to fuel a highly productive life. As a matter of fact, often food addicts are the ones in their family that think that they're not the addict, right? It's the alcoholic who's the addict, it's the drug addict who's the addict. I'm the food addict and the codependent taking care of everybody else, and I'm the non-addict, right? And it's like, oh no, dearie, you're actually an addict too. So I was fully in my food addiction. Meanwhile, I started off as a high school dropout. I went to San Jose City College, got straight A's, transferred to UC Berkeley, got straight A's, spoke at the graduation, graduated summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, got into every PhD program I applied to, turned down Johns Hopkins, turned down all the others, went to the University of Rochester, which had, in my opinion, at that time, the best PhD program in the world in the brain and cognitive sciences. And I resolved to study the brain and the mind. I wanted to know how a brain like mine could go so far off the rails so easily. And I finished my PhD in record time, did a postdoc at the University of New South Wales in Sydney in psychology, and became a psychology professor. Got tenure, got married, had three beautiful kids. I've been married for 25 years. And I did right at the juncture between my finishing my PhD and flying to Australia. I fell in with a crowd of people in the 12-step world who taught me how to clean up my food. They taught me no sugar, no flour, 3 meals a day, weigh and measure everything, write down what you're going to eat the night before, commit it to someone. The next day, your job is to eat only and exactly that. Wash, rinse, repeat. And suddenly, I was in a world where I knew which bite of food was the addictive bite and which bite of food was on my plan. Suddenly, I knew whether I was clean with food or not at the end of the day when I put my head on the pillow. And I lost all my excess weight in 6 months. And I've been in a slender body. I've been a size 4, a US size 4 now
Mm.
for 21 years. And so when I became a psychology professor, I started teaching a college course on the psychology of eating, and I put a big unit on the neuroscience of food addiction in there. And this was back in the day when neuroscience, the neuroscience of food addiction was, barely an idea in people's minds. Like this was pretty early in the field. I mean, the field is still nascent, but this was the dark ages really. But there were some good papers on it. We definitely at that point knew that, food hits the brain like drugs of abuse, sugar does and ultra processed foods do. And then in my morning meditation when I was, let's see, I had three little kids. They were 5, 5, and 2. The universe told me one morning 11 years ago to write a book called Bright Line Eating. And I had a set of visions they've all come true, where this book was going to help educate people about what sustainable weight loss really looks like, that it's really an addiction issue, and how you can't abstain from food and keep living, but you don't have to eat donuts to live, and sugar's not a food group. You can abstain from sugar safely. And yeah, and I pictured this book, my meditation, what happened in that meditation really was I was feeling like a pulse, the pain, the prayers. And I'll never know, I don't think, whether they were prayers that were being uttered right then. This was 5 in the morning Eastern time, between 5 and 5:30 a.m. Eastern time on January 26, 2014. I don't know if they were prayers people were saying right then around the world, or if they were prayers through space and time. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I could feel in my body the prayers of people praying to God for this food and this weight albatross to be lifted and wrenched off their neck and their back and their body. Like, please, God, help me with this. I cannot do this anymore. And I started like undulating with it. I could feel these prayers and they pulled out of me this book. And it became a New York Times bestseller, and the Bright Line Eating movement was born, and everything after that has happened. So that's my story.
That is a true quantum entanglement right there.
I think you have to share, Andeea, before we go get deep into hunger and cravings. I think you need to share your story so Susan can really understand the quantum entanglement.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not going to go into my whole story, but yeah, our DOC is the same. I used methamphetamines for 12 years. I'm 16 years in recovery now. And I think I know why you've been coming into my energy. So it's only been the first of I've tried to quit sugar a million times. And I did it again on January 1st, of course, but I didn't do the flour. And then I'm listening to your book for the second time, and all of a sudden I'm like, for some reason, my mind didn't focus or hear you the first time, but you say in your book, don't make this mistake of eating the flour and then not sugar. And I wanted to share with you today that I want everyone to understand the importance of listening to this advice because I am a human experiment right now. So, ever since January 1st, no sugar, right? Well, guess what? I am screaming for every time I have a meal. So, if we're having anything that
Pot
has,
stickers, pasta, quesadillas, mac and
yes,
cheese. I've
just
I've
the
run
other
that experiment. I know exactly how it goes.
Yes, just the other day. So we had tortillas with so I make these wonderful like lamb gyros, right? Which I don't need the tortilla, but we have the tortillas. So I was like, we got to use these up because we're prepping to be quitting flour now. And so, because I want my husband to do this with me. So, what am I most excited to eat on the plate? I can literally feel my nucleus accumbens like bursting with dopamine because I get to eat that tortilla. And I don't eat just one tortilla. I love to eat a plain tortilla because when I was young, we, I don't know, my mom didn't have a lot of snacky foods around. I was the oldest of seven kids. We didn't like, we would be like going into the kitchen, sneaking snacks. You know what those snacks were? They were ingredients. My dad was a miller. We had a huge bag of flour all the time. We would eat flour, just eat the flour. We would eat the brown sugar. We would like there was no cereal in our house because as soon as it
Yeah.
was bought, it was eaten up like that. And so we didn't really have snacks. So when we would go sneaking in the kitchen, we were eating ingredients. So this and like or plain bread or plain tortilla or whatever. Like my husband, he can't imagine eating a plain tortilla. He's like, no, that's for something. You don't just eat it.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I just relate a lot to your entire story, and I know that there is a reason why I'm talking to you today, and I'm on this journey because for a long time I've known that my relationship with food has not always been healthy. It ebbs and flows, but most
Yeah.
certainly I don't stay off sugar or flour very long before I'm eating it
Yeah.
gets introduced somehow anyway.
Yeah. It's such a slippery slope, right? It's such a slippery slope. Oh my gosh, I so relate. The ingredients eating, I did that too. I had a relapse once where I was binging so bad that I was really putting us in financial toil. This was back when I was still a student, right? And my husband took away the ATM card and the credit card. He's like, I know you're an addict. I get that you're sick, but I've got to keep us from going bankrupt. So you now are cut off from all finances. And at some point, I don't remember, I got like $16 in my pocket and I went to the store and I bought a sack of sugar, a sack of flour, and a pound of butter. And I just started mashing it together in a bowl with a fork. And then I would hide them under my dirty laundry in my side of the closet. And my husband would look at me. He's like, I know you're loaded, but I can't, I've looked everywhere. Where's the food? You know?
Oh, oh my gosh.
Yeah. They'll say it's not addictive, right? They're like, it's not an addiction. I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
You also say it hides in plain sight, and it's the hardest addiction that you've ever quit. And 100%, I am sitting here as a person 16 years from not using substances that is still struggling. Like I'm okay to say it. There's no shame here. Like I truly admit I still struggle with the food. And
Mhm.
I'm like I really know with all my heart that your program is going to help me. And it's, yeah, there are no accidents. So hence we quantum entangled. You heard my pairs. One, I don't
I
know what
feel
day.
it. Quantum entanglement. I love it.
I don't have the exciting crystal meth stories that you guys have, but I will say I might have been the earliest addict. My brother and I, I think I was 3 or 4, we climbed up onto on the counter to the upper shelf and we took the baby aspirin, the children's baby aspirin, and apparently we ate the whole bottle. And I'm wondering if I ate more because it was me that got the stomach pumped at age 4. And then I can remember stealing, like going into the freezer and my mom would make icebox cookies and I would safely unwrap the wax paper and cut off and then smush it to look like my mom had, was the end of it, and stealing desserts and then eating. Then it was like cereal when I had a roommate when I was like in my 20s, and she actually, anyway, we won't go there, her story, but she had actually had to move out suddenly, and I was alone. And that I think I've got this association now that when I'm living alone or where my husband travels, I look for chocolate now. But it was cereal. It was like yummy, ultra processed cereal that I was just munching and munching. And that was like a new indication for me that I could overeat, these
Yeah.
crazy processed foods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's
Whew.
actually a really great segue into our question about insatiable hunger and
mhm.
causes that. So why don't we go there as far as like starting to dive into this topic of just ultra processed food and food addiction and leptin and all the things.
Yeah. So apparently you two know all about leptin. I think you probably know more about leptin than I do. So I'm super excited to talk to you about it. But we do have this new kind of hunger on board here in our society. Like animals don't usually eat beyond their caloric requirements on average long term. Like, I live here in Rochester, New York, and I'm looking out my office window here, and there's always deer wandering by, there's squirrels, there's, all these animals, chipmunks and stuff, and I've never, ever, 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 ever seen an overweight one.
Mhm.
Fox, like never. And the way they manage their weight is they will sometimes eat a little tiny bit of a lot, and the I don't know, the leaves are green on the trees, the deer will eat them or whatever, all the grass. And as soon as they gain a little bit of weight though, those plumped up fat cells release something called leptin. The leptin comes out into the bloodstream and it circulates back to the brain, mainly to the hypothalamus, but also a little to the brainstem. And it basically gives a signal of you're not hungry anymore. You need to stop eating and you need to go get active. Use this fuel now to go, do something else to ensure your survival. Go find a mate, right? Go find greener pastures. I don't know. Build some shelter. Do something. And with that, called a negative feedback loop. That negative feedback loop handles body weight management perfectly, 100% of the time. The only fat animals don't have the gene that makes leptin, and they're extremely rare. Or they're living in an amusement park, right? And they're
Right.
eating our ultra processed foods, right? You'll find fat squirrels at Disneyland.
Or our homes, right? With
Or our
our
homes,
dogs
right,
and
right. Our
cats.
fat cats and dogs. Exactly, right. They're eating in artificial ways, right?
Mhm.
So when leptin was discovered in 1994, the pharma companies went and spent millions trying to rush to patent some kind of agonist that would act like leptin in the brain. But what happened was no matter what they tried, it didn't work. They just tried injecting large amounts of leptin into people's bloodstreams. It didn't make them thinner at all. And then, of course, people realized, well, the issue is that it's not that we don't have leptin. As we get fatter and fatter and fatter, the fat cells are doing their job. They're secreting more and more and more and more and more leptin out into the bloodstream. What's happening is something called leptin resistance. The hypothalamus, the brainstem, they can't see any of the leptin. They're deaf, dumb, and blind to it. They don't see it at all. What that means is that the brain of someone who's living with obesity literally is in starvation mode. It literally believes that the body is starving and it has all the food obsession and all of the overeating tendencies of someone who believes that they haven't eaten in a long time, that the food is scarce, and that they've got to get it all in right now. And what happens is they eat a big dinner and then they still feel like they need to eat more. It's not that they don't notice that their stomach is full. Like if they kind of think about it for a second, they're like, yeah, I'm not really hungry. Like my stomach doesn't want more food after dinner. But the overriding feeling is the elbow wants to bend, the mouth wants to chew, the brain needs more food. Like they still have this overriding desire for more. And I call it insatiable hunger. It's not satisfied by eating. It's a weird kind of hunger. It's not like, oh, I didn't eat all day, I forgot to eat, so now I'm hungry. It's not that. You could have just eaten a huge meal and still have it. It's weird. So that's leptin resistance. And really, solving leptin resistance is pretty much the holy grail of weight loss management or weight management. Now, GLP-1, these new weight loss drugs, works similarly to leptin. It's another one of these hormones that's in the same kind of genre. And the new weight loss drugs work by being an agonist, a mimicker of GLP-1 and some other related, appetite hormones. Yeah. So that's basically the story. And so the question is, how do we reverse leptin resistance? What do we do about it? Well, it turns out that leptin resistance is caused by three things pretty much: inflammation, high baseline insulin levels. That's probably the biggest one. Insulin is blocking leptin, and triglycerides. Those are the three things that are blocking leptin, which means you've got to basically get healthy. Like there's, unless you're going to be on a weight loss drug, and we can go there. I'm happy to talk about weight loss drugs. If you're not going to be on a weight loss drug, like really the only way I think to lose your excess weight is to heal your blood and your body truly by eating healthy foods. You've got to bring your insulin down, you've got to bring your inflammation down, you got to bring your triglycerides down, which means, sucking down Diet Coke isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, we both strongly believe in leptin, what most people in this space call a leptin reset, definitely. And yeah, because it works. And so one of the things I wanted you to touch on is so, you just you just kind of like when we're addicted to like a street drug or whatever you want to call it, like just, heroin, cocaine, or whatever, we're addicted to the more. Like we don't use to get high, but people think that we use to get high, but we're not using to get high. We're just using to feel normal. And with this insatiable hunger, I think it has like there's a what do I want to say? Like there's a
Similarity
similarity
or
here with
analogy?
that because it's like
Yeah. You're
the
you're only okay if you're
place
eating.
here is
Like
more.
as soon as you stop eating, the not okayness comes back. Like you're eating to be okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Now, would you say that in our system, so people who are addicted to food, that this is due mostly to processed food because they're literally engineering it so it's more addicted, so they can basically sell more food? Like, like with the bears and everything, or people like way back in the day when we were eating whole foods, like your just whole foods, we didn't have all this processed food. Would you say, like, I mean, I don't think people were food addicted way back then, or it certainly wasn't as common when it was whole
Yeah,
food.
I think it would have been either non-existent or exceedingly, exceedingly, exceedingly rare.
Okay.
But you got to go reasonably far back, right? So we've been making sugar and flour for a long time. Now, people have asked me, I don't know what, in the 1400s or, you don't even have to go that far back, right? I mean, what about 1900, right? We had sugar and flour in the 1900s. How come we didn't have the obesity problem that we have now? I mean, shoot, the 1950s, we didn't have the 1970s, we didn't have obesity like we have it now. Things changed in the 1970s and 80s in terms of snack food formulations. Several forms of sugar, like high fructose corn syrup, were discovered that are sweeter and cheaper than sugar, and snack food options exploded. And there were changes at that point in society's functioning too. Women went to work in larger numbers, and what happened is meal structure kind of broke down, and sort of snacking and grabbing food on the go, which sort of shifted eating more towards snack foods than meal type foods happened. So there's a lot of things that go into the obesogenic food environment that we have now. It's not just the presence of sugar and flour, but yeah, I believe that yeah, if you go back, 10,000 years, there's either no food addicts or very, 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 very few food addicts. I mean, if you look at hunter-gatherer populations today, they'll binge on honey for
Mhm.
sure.
It's true.
They will binge on honey, and honey is about all you can get, right? If you're a hunter gatherer, that's as good as it gets. Like you're eating tubers, you're getting 50% of your calories from one food, and it's probably a starchy, like some kind of tuber that you pull out of the ground, right? That's half your calories right there. The rest of your calories come from like 15 other foods, which is really interesting because there's probably about 145 species around you that are edible, but your brain's done some sort of magic calculation and realized that the vast majority of them don't provide enough calories for the effort and you don't eat them. So you're actually living on maybe 10 to 15 foods in your food environment, mostly one food. And absolutely, if the berry bushes are full, you're gorging your face.
Mhm.
Absolutely, if you get any honey, you're going to sit down and just stuff your face. But what happens then is that's a one-off, right? You don't get the option of getting more honey tomorrow and the next day and the next day whenever you want in a drive-through as on your way home from work. It's just a different scenario, right? So
Mhm.
you don't really have the option of getting addicted to it. It's just too hard to get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a piece of this story that I've heard you explain that I really want to make sure that I pull out of you. And since we're on the sugar and flour, so the process of by which food is addicting, like a lot of people, I don't think that they have really let it sink in that sugar in the research is I think it's 8 times more addictive than cocaine is. And
I
is
should
it,
probably
the-
explain where that comes from, but
yeah,
yeah,
and
that claim has been made. I think it was 10 times more addictive, but that claim has been made.
yeah.
You
So,
want me to share where
and you
that comes from?
tell people to imagine like these four things, and I would love for you to to do that right now?
Yeah, so sugar's more addictive than cocaine is a conclusion that a physician made after reading the research of a guy named Ahmed who took rats and basically essentially gave them a choice between cocaine and sugar, and they really prefer sugar. They even prefer sugar after you've pre-addicted them to cocaine, which is kind of crazy. They really want that sugar. I mean, it's interesting actually, the first studies of the dopamine response to drugs was done with glucose.
No.
That's what they used.
Oh,
Like
oh, wow.
we're talking decades ago. Yeah. So anyway, so what you're talking about, Andeea, is I just get people to like really think about what a drug is. Like, let's start with heroin and cocaine because we all agree that they're drugs. They're not controversial. What are they? Where do they come from? Right? Where does heroin come from? Where does cocaine come from? They both come from plants. And they come from plants that people consume or use in a way, but non-addictively. So the cocaine comes from the coca bush, which is in the Andes Mountains, and there's leaves. Hikers will pluck them and put them in their cheek and kind of chew them as they hike. And there's literally a scientific paper published showing that that's not addictive. It doesn't do much for them. It makes their cheek a little numb, and it might give them a little feeling of zing, like it's kind of stimulating there, which is why they do it. But, psychotropically, it's like the equivalent of drinking half a cup of mildly caffeinated tea. Like it's really nothing to write home about it. Nobody's breaking into their grandma's house to steal the VCR, to hawk it to go get coca leaves, right? Again, showing my age. So
It's okay. I'm even older, so that's why I'm giggling.
but if you extract the inner essence of that coca leaf and then you put it through this elaborate refining and processing process, right? Like you purify it and refine it down into a fine white powder, you produce a very powerful drug called cocaine. You've taken a harmless plant that had certain properties and you've turned it into a drug through the processing. So cocaine is made the same way. I mean, I was very aware when I was in early recovery that I should not eat 6 poppy seed bagels before going in for a drug test because heroin comes from poppy plants and poppy seeds will make you fail an opium a test for opium, if you eat them in enough quantity, but they won't get you high and they won't make you addicted. It's only when you extract the inner essence of that poppy plant and then you refine and purify it down into either a fine brown powder, which is opium, or a liquidy sludge, which is heroin, kind of equivalent to high fructose corn syrup, right? Now you've turned a very, very harmless plant. Poppy seeds are harmless. Poppy plants are harmless. You could eat the flowers. I think they're edible. You could eat a lot of them. It would not cause any problems, but you've taken a harmless plant and turned it into a drug. And sugar and flour are made the same way, right? Like the things that sugar is made out of, corn, beets, rice, I mean, that brown rice syrup, right? High fructose corn syrup, sugar cane. Like you can go chew on sugar cane. It tastes a little sweet, it will not addict you the way that sugar does, right? When you take the inner essence of a plant, I eat corn on the cob, I put beets on my salad, I eat brown rice. But when you take the inner essence of those plants, just the right portion of it, right? And then you extract it, and then you put it through this processing plant and you refine and purify it into that fine powder, you've taken a harmless plant and you've turned it into a drug. And this is also why when I tell people to abstain from flour, I do mean all flour.
Mhm.
Coconut flour, no. Almond flour, no. All flour. And the reason is it's not the plant that's the problem. It's the refining process. It's the purifying process. So digesting almonds or coconuts or chickpeas or rice or wheat berries, right? Boil them up, have them for breakfast. I don't care if you eat wheat berries for breakfast. I mean, some people are gluten sensitive. I'm not talking to you, but most people are not. Eat wheat berries for breakfast. Don't eat white flour or brown flour, right? So the difference in digestion between eating the whole wheat berry, let's say, or eating white flour is metabolically the equivalent of taking a brick of ice that's 1 foot by 1 foot a cube and taking it out to an Arizona hot blacktop driveway in the summertime and leaving it out there to melt. It will melt. It will take a couple of hours, right? But if you take that cube of ice and then you mash it up and into snow cone shavings and you take it out and sprinkle it on the driveway, it's going to melt on contact. And that's the difference in digestion. It's a real difference. Like eating almond flour is not eating almonds.
Right.
There's a massive difference, right?
Mhm.
So that's, the reality is that cocaine and heroin have dopamine profiles that are not that different than sugar and flour. But take it from a recovering addict, the recovery environment is light years different. And that's what makes food addiction the hardest, right? When I quit smoking crack, I had a whole universe of people to start interacting with again who didn't want me to smoke crack, who didn't smoke crack themselves. It was never pushed on me. It was never suggested to me. I could drive to work without seeing any billboards or logos or hearing jingles on the radio that reminded me of smoking crack. I could go to work and there wasn't crack cocaine there. I could go through my whole day and no one ever mentioned crack. When I'm addicted to sugar and flour, that is not my experience,
Yeah.
right? All day, every day is a conditioned cue, a reinforcer to break my abstinence and indulge. And people are shaming me for not eating pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. The same people that will trip over themselves to
Mhm.
get me sparkling water on New Year's Eve because I don't drink champagne because I've been sober for 30 years
Mhm.
will literally shame me for not eating pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. Now I don't care. I just laugh. You're not getting me to eat that stuff. You don't want to see me on that stuff. And I don't want to see me on that stuff. It's bad news, right? But our society is not set up for people recovering from food addiction. So it's way, way, way harder.
Yeah. I know in your book you say that you're not my food is it's like a poison to our bodies, and you break out in obsession, cravings, and obesity, kind of like an alcoholic will say, I'm allergic to alcohol because I'll break out in handcuffs, kind of like the same the
Yeah.
same thing. Like, yeah, and it is everywhere. My husband just the other day, because he was listening to the book with me, he was like, "Oh my gosh, I think about like when he was like a little league coach, like way, way, way a long time ago." And he was like, the highlight of that for everyone was like who brought the snacks. Like it was the gathering was all around the food, and they were all
Yeah.
doing like practice their little league game or whatever they were doing,
Yeah.
ball or whatever. Yeah, everything is there's too many food cues. It makes it hard. And like you said, it's hiding in plain sight. And most people don't even get addiction to begin with, even if they understand, oh, a person addicted to drugs, like that's a disease. Even if they understand that, like there's still a whole nother piece now that they need to understand when it comes to food addiction.
Right.
And I'm sure
Right.
you fight
Totally.
that all the time with, your program, and like maybe the family
Yeah.
members, they're not supportive, or yeah, I can't imagine.
It's getting better. I mean, I think now, I mean, there's been a sea change in the last 10 years since Bright Line Eating was founded 10 years ago. And I like to think that we have something to do with that. We're doing our best here. We're helping. We're putting our shoulder to the wheel, pushing, pushing, pushing. But, it is changing. It's changing academically, it's changing professionally, and it's changing societally where people are starting to get that these foods are addictive. I think there's still a big gap, though, in understanding what that means for people who are affected and that a bright line solution really is empowering and helpful for a lot of people. And we still, unfortunately, we were talking about this before we hit record here, we still have so much pushback from the eating disorder treatment community because they're so terrified that the notion of food addiction could be real, which might mean that abstinence might be helpful for some people, which would mean, their whole life's work of convincing people not to have food rules and to please, please eat all foods in moderation without any shame or guilt about it would be counterproductive for some people. And it's just they can't go there yet in their minds, unfortunately. So yeah, we still have a ways to go when it comes to treatment, and we don't have a lot of studies yet on treatment. We have some and more coming all the time, but we will see a lot of changes on this in the next 10, 20 years, I have no doubt that it'll be listed in the DSM as a substance use disorder. It'll be in the International Classification of Diseases by the World Health Organization. Food addiction is very, very real. You can point to it on a brain scan. It's not controversial among neuroscientists who understand the brain disorder element of addiction, that it's, food addiction is really just like heroin and cocaine addiction. Fundamentally, it's the
Aren't
same
you on
thing.
a team of like 40 neuroscientists that are trying to get the food addiction
Yeah.
into DSM?
Yep. Yep. And there's an application in there right now, waiting. So Ashley Gearhart and her colleagues have submitted an application to the DSM-5 committee, and we'll see what they say. You know, the implications of that diagnosis are pretty big, right? So
Right.
somewhere between 14 and 24% of people have full-blown food addiction. And the average person in the United States, the average person has 2.36 of 11 symptoms of food addiction, which would qualify them for a mild substance use disorder to food, to ultra-processed foods. But the reason they don't all have food addiction is that you not only have to have the right number of symptoms, you have to also have a clinically significant degree of impairment or distress. And they don't have that, most of them, right? But first of all, you'd be, immediately just saying all these people have a mental illness, right? According to that's what the DSM does. It diagnoses mental illness, right? So all these people who just think that they love their pizza and wings on a Friday night, it's like, okay, that's a mental illness. That's first off. Then big agribusiness, big food, big pharma. They're all sucking at the teat of this industry that's addicting us, right? And now you've got the potential for regulation. You've got like, well, if these things are really addictive and that's a disorder, can we be feeding that to kids in schools? You've got the whole school lunch program that's up for revision. You've got daycare centers. You've got hospitals. You've got prisons. I was in the hospital. They came around and said, do you have any allergies? And I just said, I don't always do this, but I was like, yeah, sugar and flour. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat flour. I'm allergic. They put a band on my wrist. And the next morning they served me pancakes with syrup for breakfast. I was like, McFly, McFly. So yeah, we're, that committee is going to think twice before swallowing the bile and saying, okay, this is real, but it is real. And so it's coming and the studies are mounting. There's now 350 new scientific journal articles published every year, over 350 of them on food addiction. Like,
Wow.
not going away.
Yeah.
Like, the evidence is mounting and mounting and mounting. We've got a pile of studies now that's like in the thousands, thousands upon thousands of studies. It's not going away. And people are excited about it because, I mean, it's like I said, it's 14 to 24% of the population, depending on how you look at it. But so for even and functional people, right? Some of these people are academics and they're getting excited because it meets with their lived experience. They're like, oh yeah, and some of them are scared about it, but some of them are like, oh yeah, I want to study this. So yeah.
I
And
heard a stat on the
you're
weekend.
studying.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I heard a statistic on the weekend in a course that Canada is the second most addicted country in the world. And at first I resisted that. I was like, not Canada. Are you kidding me? But
Addicted to
then,
anything?
yeah, yeah, so anything. And then I thought about it and I drove home and then I looked in our little town and I could see cannabis clinic, cannabis clinic, cannabis clinic. And then I had to get gas and I walked into the Quick Mart and the whole thing is sugar and ultra processed foods. Like, and you just think, there's
And beer?
no real food to see, you know?
Do they sell beer at the Quick Mart there at the gas station?
No, not
No.
yet here. No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah,
So, but
interesting.
in Quebec, they would sell, but we're getting it more and more. Like our Costco now sells alcohol, our grocery stores do. So, yeah, I don't think quick like our Quick Marts,
Yeah.
but it's not. And I'm thinking, well, wonder what the number one country is. I don't know. Do you know?
No, I didn't see that study. No. I mean, I bet
No,
it's the United States, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Russia? Like, they like their
no,
alcohol there. Ireland? I don't know.
right? And
I
there's
mean,
countries that smoke more than we do, right?
oh, absolutely. Woo! Go to
Yeah.
Europe and they're smoking. So I guess it kind of, I'd be curious to see I would love to see that study.
Yeah, and I don't
I would,
have it. I'll have to do some research
yeah,
and digging to find it.
yeah.
Can I ask, you've mentioned bright line eating. Can you tell us what a bright line is?
Yeah, a bright line is a clear, unambiguous boundary that you just don't cross, and it produces consistent and reliable results. So it's a legal term. A bright line rule is a standard that's applied consistently to produce the results that you want. And I first came across the term in a late chapter in the book Willpower by Roy Baumeister, and he's talking about Eric Clapton's sobriety and how how great bright lines are for certain issues of willpower and temptation, right? And then in the book he said, well, bright lines are great for lots of issues of willpower, self-control, temptation, but they're not applicable to all situations. The dieter obviously cannot abstain from all food. And I almost threw the, I mean, I'd been, in food recovery for 10 years by then. I almost threw the book across the room. I just couldn't even believe. Now, Roy Baumeister, you got to understand, I look up to this guy. Like, this guy has published scads of books, hundreds of journal articles. He's single-handedly created several fields of psychology where they study, like, he's amazing, this man. And I just thought that was actually the precursor to that morning meditation where the universe said, write a book called Bright Line Eating. The name came to me from that experience some days or weeks prior of reading that. And anyway, so a bright line is a clear boundary and it's abstinence, right? So a bright line for sugar means you're not going to eat it ever. That means on the cruise, that means on Valentine's Day, that means on your birthday, that means on your husband's birthday, that means on New Year's, that means on Christmas. It's a bright line. In the same way that someone who quits smoking because they've got lung cancer and they smoke 3 packs a day isn't going to be thinking, well, I'll quit smoking, but of course, when I go to the, to the concert, I'll have a cigarette, right? No, they're not thinking that. They're going to quit smoking, right? Like with a bright line. So, yeah.
But why does some people like, okay, I'll get personal. My husband loves chocolate. He can just have one piece of chocolate, whereas I can on day one have one piece of chocolate and I'm good. The next day, I was like, okay, I'll have that piece of chocolate again. My brain will be thinking about it. And then day three, I want the whole bar. And I'm having to hide the chocolate in the freezer because I prefer warm chocolate to cold chocolate, or just to make it difficult, or I hide it up high. Or this time I told him the leftover Toblerone, beautiful big Toblerone. I said, take it with you and just leave it in your car. And he did. He knows, because if he comes back, I'm going to slowly eat away. And then eventually I'll either, yeah, I'll end up hiding it or getting someone else to hide it from me. So why are some people, can you tell us, yeah,
I
the
can.
difference?
Yeah, I totally can. I mean, from what you just described, it sounds to me like your husband is not at all susceptible to chocolate addiction at this moment in time. You are moderately susceptible to chocolate
Mhm.
addiction at this moment of
Mhm.
time. Chocolate's not even my thing, but I would have had that piece of chocolate, and then within an hour, I would have eaten all the chocolate in the house, no matter how long it had been since the last time I'd had chocolate. So
Mhm.
here's why. Addiction is somewhat genetic and somewhat environmental, just in terms of general susceptibility. We know that addiction runs in families. We see, family trees of alcoholics and smokers and people with obesity and people with drug addiction. Addiction runs in families. It's genetic. It's moderately heritable, about as heritable as extroversion and other types of personality traits or IQ. Those are all moderately heritable. It's moderately heritable, which is to say that's pretty heritable, right? We think of smart parents having smart kids, right? Generally speaking, right? It's pretty heritable. There aren't a lot of things that are very heritable, like beyond moderately. It's also environmental. We know that people who have no genetic susceptibility to addiction, if they're raised with a lot of trauma, like a high ACE score, adverse childhood
Mhm.
experiences, they have a greater susceptibility to developing addiction, regardless of family genetics. So it's partly genetic, partly environmental. And what happens then is you, based on your environment and your genes, have an underlying susceptibility to addiction. Now, some people, raised in supportive, loving families with no family history of addiction, literally have no susceptibility to addiction, meaning you could shoot them up with heroin every day for months and they would never get addicted. And you might say, well, Dr. Thompson, that's preposterous. Heroin is addictive, and I'm pretty sure they would be addicted if you shot them up with heroin every day, whether they wanted to be taking those shots or not. And I would say, no, not really. I mean, when you stopped injecting them with heroin, they would go through withdrawal physiologically, but left to their own devices, they would not seek out another shot of heroin. These people, if they go in for back surgery and get the pills, that are heroin, right? The opiates, they take them as prescribed for as long as needed, and the minute they can wean off, they do. And they have no problem. They don't become pill heads. They don't have any susceptibility. Okay. Those of us who have some susceptibility need to wire up an addiction in a particular domain. So what's got to happen is that you use something, and for whatever reason, and it might have to do with emotionality, like that first time I did mushrooms, I was with some cute boys and I was 14, and I had previously gone to a girls' school and been really unpopular socially, like really ostracized. And those boys were like talking with me and interacting with me. There was a lot of heightened emotionality for me that night, right? For lots of reasons. So things come together in a certain way, and the brain kind of goes like, oh, yeah, that'll do. And then it scurries to go, so what happened right before that? Like, how do we recreate that? And it wires up for that just a little bit, right? And then the next time it's like, oh yeah, right. That was good. And then it goes, so what was just right before that? And how would we get there again? And over a period of time, you wire up an addiction in a particular domain, the cues that predict that reward that makes the brain feel just so, right? All the while, your brain's dopamine response to that drug is changing. It went from going, woo, yeah, baby, to like now the receptors are changing. And when you have it again, it's like, okay, but then there's some letdown. And then after a while, you just feel low until you get the drug just to feel normal. So all that wiring up is taking place. So that's basically how the wiring of addiction works. And it is domain specific. So I've been addicted to almost everything in the world, but not shopping. I could care less. There are people who get addicted to the behavior of shopping for sure. I'm not one of them. I really am not. Gambling, I've only felt the nip of the ringer, and I could probably set up an account in one of those, sports apps that are out now, and I would probably be okay for a little while. But if something happened and I got into it, it could wire up, and before I knew it, I could have a big problem.
Yeah, and this is exactly why we're abstinent, right? Like I only loved stimulants. I hated anything that brought me down or would make me eat. Hated pot, hated alcohol, hated opiates, didn't care for any of it. Like it's so weird and yeah, I never with the domain thing, like it just never nothing ever happened, but now would I test myself and go take some pain pills if a hospital gave them to me? No, I still won't. Even though
Yeah,
yeah, I won't play with it because I
yeah,
know towards
yeah,
addict, right? So yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And why do we keep targeting sugar and flour when you've been mentioning sugar and flour? Well, like, why aren't we talking about, like, for me, nut butters? At one point when I went grain free, sugar free, I started, pumpkin seed butter, which doesn't taste that great. It's not compared to peanut butter. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this was like candy. And then I would, oh my God, it's plugs up your digestive system, right? It's just this dense paste, you know. So just curious, why do you always say sugar and flour?
Yeah, so I guess because if you get sugar and flour out altogether, you've taken care of not all, but the vast majority of the substance addiction
Mm,
options. There
okay.
are still some things left over, and people vary in how much they tend toward them. The nut butters are definitely one category, cheese, another category, meats and processed meats, bacon, sausage. Yeah, I've heard someone say, I don't have a sweet tooth, I have a meat tooth, right? So that's another category. Fatty things in general, like, oh my God, I could eat 5 pounds of roasted Brussels sprouts if they're oily enough, like deep
Mhm.
fried Brussels sprouts, and I could eat them all. Seriously, oh my God. So, I mean, yams with butter on them, right? So we could go on, right?
Mm.
People will sit down and eat handfuls of raisins and walnuts, right? So dried fruit is out in bright line eating, but even nuts are triggering for some people. So all that said, real food recovery also involves boundaries, bright lines that handle the process addiction of eating, because eating's a real twofer. You got a substance addiction, but there's also a process addiction, which means the addiction just to eating. And so boundaries or bright lines around when and how much you eat are really necessary. So in bright line eating, we start people off on a plan that's 3 meals a day with no snacking, no grazing. And we have them weigh and measure their food so that in part we can keep foods in the plan like nut butters and cheese and sausage, because when they're weighed and measured and planned out the night before in the context of a meal that also includes tons of vegetables, the brain tends to absorb it okay. Like I could eat 4 ounces of sausage, 6 ounces of green beans, a 6 ounce salad with a tablespoon of oil and a tablespoon of vinegar, and walk away from that meal being okay. If I had unlimited license to eat sausage whenever I wanted, however much I wanted, I would be in trouble. Same might go for you too. If you had half an ounce of that pumpkin paste, which is basically a tablespoonful, right? And that was part of your committed food plan, you might find pumpkin paste a food you could eat in moderation. If it was weighed and measured and pre-committed as part of a meal and you were eating it with a salad and with a
Mhm.
protein and with a vegetable, it might be fine.
But not the chocolate.
But not the chocolate. As soon as you put sugar and flour in there, this is what we've seen over and over again. You just go off the rails. And a lot of this research was done by trial and error. Remember that 12-step community I was talking about? People like the Wild West not knowing what to do. Well, literally from the time Overeaters Anonymous was founded in January of 1960, hundreds of thousands of people flocked to 12-step food programs over the next several decades. And mostly they were unsuccessful, but pockets, little communities of successful people cropped up who were doing a specific thing, and the sponsor would pass down to the sponsee a way to do it that worked. And suddenly there were these little unicorn communities of people. That's what I fell in with. I suddenly fell in with a community of people that had a solution that had been going for decades already, passed down from sponsor to sponsee, and they knew how to do it. And so what these people have is they have a spidey sense of like, oh yeah, don't eat that. Oh yeah, eat that. No, my sponsor wouldn't eat that. They're all just, it's like a folklore. It's like they're just taught, there's no science involved at all,
Know
but they
that
have a
about
sense of
them.
what works.
Wow.
What?
I
Yeah.
didn't know that about that community. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And, the 12-step programs have splintered off and there's now lots of them. And
Mindful.
so, yeah, so it's a buyer beware situation, because you could show up and go to a meeting and get no help at all, or you could get lots of help. I mean, it kind of depends, and so.
So, okay, people trying to lose weight, what are they doing wrong? Like, other than the sugar and flour, would you
They're
give any more
almost
things?
everything wrong. Okay, so in a nutshell, they're pairing exercise with their weight loss attempt, which is unproductive
Okay.
because exercise doesn't help to make you thin. And what it does that's counter is it triggers, it like the body wants to eat if you're exercising more, but also the main issue is that it's gobbling up willpower and focus. And getting the food right is so hard, and people fail at it so miserably. And it is the linchpin to losing weight. You've got to get the food right. And while you're excited starting a weight loss attempt, you've got to use every bit of that mojo to focus on establishing a plan of eating that's the right plan and getting it automatic, like getting it habitual, so that you're not deviating at all and you have it wired in with automaticity. And exercise will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. If you're draining out your willpower, getting to the gym, doing your sets, doing your reps, how many minutes, how many miles, all of a sudden you've just depleted your focus, your mojo, your willpower for getting your food automatic. And it sets up what psychologists call the compensation effect, which is like when you drive out of the gym and you're thinking, well, I can have a latte because I just worked out for the fourth time this week. A latte is not going to hurt anything. Boom. That deviation now is the beginning of a new habit. And 6 months from now, you're going to be as fat as you ever were. So the first thing they're doing wrong is they're exercising. I know all the good things exercise does. I exercise all the time. It's great for everything except weight loss. The minute it's time, you need to add the exercise back in, not at the beginning. Okay, so there's that. They're also typically following a plan that licenses eating all the time of something, whether it's carrot sticks or, it's keto, so it's, nuts and whatever. Like most plans license unlimited eating or snacking or grazing, unproductive. It keeps them yum, yum, yum going, and suddenly that doesn't work. What else are they doing wrong? They are typically not abstaining from sugar and flour, so they're keeping the addiction alive, right? So basically, they're just always trying to rob Peter to pay Paul because the addiction is still happening. So they're not, we haven't talked about dopamine downregulation, but they're not healing their dopamine receptors, which is the source of cravings, and they're not fundamentally solving the leptin resistance, right? Because
Can you
they're
explain
not.
the dopamine? 'Cause I've heard you explain that we have a number of these dopamine receptors, and then when you eat the food, you start to down, like there's less of them. So then you need to eat more of it. It's almost, is it like a dopamine resistance in a sense? Like
Yeah,
leptin resistance and insulin resistance?
yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, well, no.
Not exactly.
Not exactly. I believe a resistance is more that the receptors get blocked. In this case, they
Okay.
literally thin out and go away.
Okay.
They become less numerous and less responsive. So what happens is you eat a donut, floods the nucleus accumbens, the reward center of the brain, with, or you're an indigenous person and you found the honeycomb, right? So now you're eating honey, you're binging on honey. It floods the nucleus accumbens with dopamine way more than it would normally get from the ripe berries on the berry bushes. And if it's a one-off, it's fine. If it's over and over and over again, what happens is the receptors know that they're getting blown out and that it's way too much. Donuts don't exist out in the wild. Like it's a stimulus that's way beyond what those receptors intended to handle, right? And so what happens then is that the receptors start to brace themselves essentially for that onslaught that they know is going to be coming again. And so they thin out, they become less numerous, less responsive. And now everything's hunky dory as long as you keep eating donuts regularly. As soon as you have gone a little while without a donut, at baseline, you don't have enough dopamine to just feel okay. You now feel what in 12-step parlance we call restless, irritable, and discontented. You feel itchy, you feel not good, you feel malaise, you feel grumpy, you feel irritable, you feel depressed, you feel not good. And your solution is to swing by the coffee shop and get a muffin and a latte, or to swing by the drive-through and get some food, or to go to get that bar of chocolate, whatever. I mean, you could be super healthy, right? And your solution is to eat some vegan, organic, gluten-free, cacao muffins, whatever it is, right? And that is to help you feel okay again for a bit. So that's dopamine downregulation.
Okay. Huge. That really helps. Okay, so let's get into bright line eating. And there's there's some things that I guess the community aspect of it. Like, can you tell us about why it works? In
Yeah, so bright line eating is a plan that's designed for maximal automaticity, and it's a super supportive community. And we have the best weight loss results on planet Earth for a behavioral program, right? Like literally, we've published studies in peer-reviewed scientific journals showing that our results are comparable to weight loss drugs without the drugs. And the community component is really powerful. So when people join Bright Line Eating, they join, a family, and they don't have to participate. They can participate to any degree they want to, but there's a lot of support options for them. So we have published data showing that when people do Bright Line Eating, not only do they lose their excess weight and keep it off, but then also their energy goes up massively. Their feeling of being loved, supported, and connected in the world goes up massively. Their loneliness melts away. Their days of depressed mood go down. Their days of poor mental health go way down. And yeah, they just start to feel wonderful overall. Their
Wow.
happiness, their flourishing goes sky high.
I've heard you use some stats about thousands and thousands of pounds that have been lost. Do you know the latest bright line eating statistic on that?
There's no way to know because
No.
the books all keep selling and the podcast is out there. We don't know how many people. I mean, 2 million people have joined the email list at some point or another over the last 10 years. A lot of them impact their families and friends in ways that we don't have any way of tracking.
Mhm.
So there's no way to know. what I do have, and I know that you're gonna load the YouTube video up here. Should I share some data that only people who are watching can see? I mean, we could describe it if you want, but I know we have to go soon too.
What do you think, Andeea? Do we have time?
This can be the end before our last question here. Are you able to share?
Yeah, apparently I am. I just tried. So
Here.
this, oops,
Okay.
I don't think this graph yet is published. This graph itself isn't published. Without the green bars, it is. It's in a review article called The Badly Behaving Brain, How Ultra-Processed Food Addiction Thwarts Sustained Weight Loss. If you take out the green bars have been published just in the last year, and they came out more recently. This here was a 4-year follow-up study on Wegovy, and this here was a 6-year follow-up study that's in press right now from Bright Line Eating. So for anyone listening, what I'm showing here is a graph that basically shows the pretty abysmal results of all weight loss programs like Noom, Weight Watchers, Slim Fast, Atkins, Nutrisystem, Zone Diet, like going vegan. Like they all have pretty much the same results, which is like 2 to 5 or 7% weight loss over the first 2 months to 1 year. Almost nobody publishes weight loss data after that. Weight Watchers has some data, but they're all meager, like 3% weight loss. That's like someone's 300 pounds and 2 years later they're maintaining a 9-pound weight loss. Like that's a drop in the bucket, right? It's nothing for them. They're 291 instead of 300. Weight loss drugs came along and they have way better results. They're getting 15% weight loss. Some of the new tirzepatides are getting 20, 25% and more. Bright Line Eating is in line with weight loss drugs. Bright Line Eating is getting the same results as weight loss drugs, as specifically Wegovy and Ozempic. Bright Line Eating gets pretty much identical results to Ozempic and Wegovy, a little bit longer lasting, meaning people stop losing weight on Wegovy after a year and 3 months on average. People keep losing weight on Bright Line Eating a little bit longer than that, and they maintain their weight loss for longer. So people start regaining weight on Wegovy after 2 years. They regain a third of their weight. In Bright Line Eating, they don't on average. So yeah, that's what these graphs show. And again, straight from the scientific literature, we publish our stuff so you can read our papers. You can go to our website, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there's a link for publications, and you can just read up on our studies.
Thank you for sharing that. That's super impactful. I hope people go hunt down your stuff for people to find you, and we'll ask you that in a little bit, but I'll make sure we have everything linked. We always ask us, our signature question is what does quantum healthy mean to you? But we want to ask you today, what does a bright body mean to you? A bright line body.
Yeah, so we talk about a bright body and Bright Line Eating because at first we talked about getting people to goal weight, and then we literally had people in our community who'd lost 150, 200 pounds, but they didn't feel like a success because they'd identified a goal weight range of, let's say 120 to 130 pounds, and they weighed 100 pounds after losing 200 pounds. And so we stopped talking about goal weight. It felt really unproductive. And so now we talk about a bright body. And living in a bright body to me means, first of all, a body that carries around a mind that's free of food obsession, that's not thinking about what they've eaten or not eaten, whether they're on their plan or off their plan, how many miles, how many calories, how many pounds. Like that is all that food chatter is out of the mind. It's also not thinking about the body that much. All the weight chatter is gone. They're not stepping on the scale multiple times a day or even multiple times a week. They're comfortable in their clothes. They're sitting down and not worried about rolls in their stomach or whatever. They're just in their body. They're not focused on their body as a project, unless they're trying to do something like learn how to do a pull-up or something like that. The body is a vehicle for doing fun stuff. The body is a vehicle for movement, for hugs, for connection, for vitality, for hikes, for climbing to the peak and seeing the sunset. So there's a body that, is on the floor playing with grandkids, that's riding a bike and, feeling the wind, breeze by. It's a body that climbs onto an airplane and clicks that seatbelt and feels great and doesn't think twice about it. It's a body that walks into a restaurant and doesn't worry about whether they have to sit in a booth or a chair, because what'll they fit on? It's a body that sits down in a chair and doesn't worry about it breaking. It's a body that doesn't feel super stiff in the morning when they wake up. It's a body that, you can bend down and touch your toes and feel really comfy. It's a body that really feels like a spring in the step pretty often, like a lightness and a freedom.
Mm.
It's a body that is a beautiful vehicle for the soul and the mind and the heart. And it's a body that's sending signals from the gut and the heart up to the brain to inform decisions and guide the course. It's a body that's in tune with the mind and the heart of the person who's inhabiting it. It's a body that's not disliked or shamed or judged or picked at or worried about or condemned. It's a body that's appreciated. It's a body that gets lotion slathered on it. It's a body that makes love and has orgasms. It's a body that enjoys its sensuality, its sexuality. It's a body with sparkly eyes and a big wide smile that goes all the way up to the crinkles on the side of the eyes. That's a bright body.
Oh,
I can't see you, Andeea, but are you crying through that?
no, no, I'm not crying. That made me very happy to hear you say that. I love everything you just said. Yes, freedom.
Ah, freedom,
Freedom.
freedom,
Coherence.
integration, wellness.
Like
Mm,
quantum coherence is coming up for
Yeah.
me.
yes,
Yeah.
incoherent.
Oh, that was fabulous. We should ask you though to help you and to thank you. What are your offerings? What would you say? Like I know you have the book, you have a master class. Do you have it's a boot camp? Is that right?
Yes. So the basic Bright Line Eating course is the Bright Line Eating Boot Camp. And if anyone goes to brightlineeating.com, so it's spelled
Okay.
just the way you would think. BRIGHTLINEEATING, brightlineeating.com. Get a little more education maybe. I mean, this podcast has been a lot, but watch the master class. It's a 2 hour commitment. And if you're going to really do Bright Line Eating, it's worth it. Do that 2 hour commitment. And when you do that, you'll get a not a trivial, like a massive discount to the boot camp. So it's worth investing those 2 hours and get into the boot camp. It's a 10-week online course. And it is the best weight loss investment you'll ever make in your whole life in every way. I mean, our weight loss results are unparalleled in the world. We literally have the most successful weight loss program on planet Earth, and we have published the scientific data to back that up. So, yeah, come join us with the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. That's a 10-week course. And then when you graduate, we offer you a membership to Bright Lifers. You can't get into Bright Lifers any other way. You have to do the bootcamp first. You have to be indoctrinated. We have to brainwash you a little bit first before you're allowed to be a bright lifer. So you have to come do the boot camp, get in touch with what it's about. There's a 14-day money back guarantee. So if you get in and you're like, nope, this isn't for me, that's fair. Just kick the tires, give it a try for 14 days, and you can be out if you want. And yeah, if you fall in love with it, you'll have a lot of new best friends waiting for you on the inside there.
And what's your book called?
The first one is called Bright Line Eating.
Okay.
And then
You have several
I
books?
do. I'm working on my fifth right now. So the second book was the official Bright Line Eating cookbook.
Okay.
And then the third book is called Resume, and it's all about relapse, how to inoculate yourself against relapse, how to get out of relapse if you're in it, how to ride the waves of life more smoothly so that you're not as vulnerable to relapse. It's all about
Mm.
relapse. And then the fourth book is On This Bright Day. It's a daily meditation reader. It's like a daily dose of spiritual brightness, or it's not spiritual really. It's a daily dose of more like soulful psychological brightness. And then the fifth book that I'm working on right now will be called Maintain, and it'll be coming out in a little over a year. And it's on the three main identity shifts that are needed in order to maintain significant weight loss.
Hey,
Um,
super.
I
Are
think
you
what
are you on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook,
Yep, all
all
those things,
all the socials
all the things,
as Bright Light
all the
Eating?
social. Yeah, and Susan Peirce Thompson, both.
Susan, okay. And in order to thank you, I think we're both going to thank you. So maybe do you want to go first? Or do you want to end it, Andeea? What do you think?
No, no, yes, thank you so, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your beautiful soul with us and what you've given to the world it is allowing people to have that bright body you just explained. And I really feel like it's going to help just, I mean, it already has helped so many people, but I hope people listen to this and they maybe not have heard of you before, and now they understand that they have a way out, because I think a lot of people are in recovery and they are still struggling with an addiction of some kind. One of the things that I want to do for people is help them in their long-term recovery after, their long-term recovery from substance use, but there's still so much that happens after that, and you know it very well. And I want to make sure that I also link the food freedom quiz in the show notes so people can get their score. So I'm a 9, and so I
Yeah.
know that I have no business not doing bright line eating.
I was gonna say, Andeea, are you gonna hop into the boot camp? 9's a pretty high score, girlfriend. You
It
might
is
want some
pretty
relief.
high. I know, I know.
I got an 8 too. And
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
I was surprised. Yeah, so I guess it's a question, and then I want to thank you for a couple things. If someone is happy with their weight though, but they
Yeah.
have a score of 8, is there still benefit to
Oh
doing the
yeah.
bright line?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, totally. Because it's not about the weight anyway, right?
right.
People can do bright line eating and gain weight. They need to gain weight. They're
Mm,
too thin and they need to gain weight. So if you're at, your right body weight, then you would immediately start on a maintenance plan
right.
and get coaching. You would get coaching in the boot camp. So you would get coaching to tweak that to make sure that it's your maintenance plan dialed in for you. And then you'd be really, it's what I was saying earlier, right? It's the mental game. It's the food chatter, the
Mm,
weight chatter. You'd get freedom from all of that. And the mastery, right? Mastery is one of the three
mm,
components of of flourishing living, right? It's autonomy, relatedness, and mastery, and to feel the feeling of mastery around your food and how you're navigating nutrition is so empowering, especially in our world that sucks us in all the time with all this nonsense. And then we feel so disappointed and let down and like, we're doing it again. We know it doesn't serve us. To feel the mastery of being free of that is so empowering. You get back time in your day. You have no idea how much people are wasting on food, time wise, money wise, energy wise, psychically. It's just this big energy leak, and you'd be free of that.
right.
So worth it.
So worth it.
It was never about weight in the first place, right? This isn't really a weight issue.
No,
It's fundamentally not.
yeah. No, it's a freedom issue, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have to personally say, to witness you and Andeea meet after doing 30 podcasts with Andeea, and we've like myself and all our listeners know her story, is truly touching to have seen this. And
Oh,
we both want to thank you for the journey. You've been through quite a journey, Susan. Your teenage years to just experience kind of your lowest self to now seeing you now, like your highest self. You've authored all these books and you've just changed so many tens of thousands or plus, or I don't even know more. Like you said, we really don't know how many pounds of weight and how many people actually truly have benefited from you, waking up and having this moment and realization of bright line eating. So yeah, just thank you for your passion to help so many suffering, because food addiction it is real, and you use this term. I don't know if you've used it today, but I love it. It's this: you're going to have people happy, thin, and free. And like, what more do you want, right?
yeah. There you go.
So
Oh, Andeea, Laura, so wonderful to meet you.
you too. And we so appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time. Thank you for sticking around at the end of this podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, VIVARAYS, who allows for us to get this information to you. They offer top-of-the-line blue blocking glasses, which, as we know, are critical for our health these days for blocking artificial light at night. Over 90% of our time is spent indoors under artificial lights, and this puts us all prone to circadian rhythm disruption. You can use the code QUANTUMHEALTHY for a discount. Link is in the show notes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Andeea at andeearay.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, Go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.